Rick, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Keith. Good morning.
Good morning, man. Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm doing great, man. Always happy to see you. I mean, always with the capital A, capital A, always. So today's topic, Rick, is what would life be like if I went beyond certain thoughts or narratives? So you want me to kick that off?
I'd love to hear how you do it. If I were listening to you for the first time instead of the 200th time or however many we have of these, I would say, oh, I would love to do that, Keith, but how do I do it?
Well, the first thing is to be aware of whatever my prevailing narrative is and or thoughts. And I have to go and look at what is creating that narrative. And so, but I think what I would have done in the past is I would looked at like whatever I thought was reality. So it would be like, um, let's say that it's a job situation or relationship. Like I'm in or no, I got one because this is a real example, so it'll be easy. I'm in a horrible place, like in terms of where I live. I don't live in a great place. It's not the place that I want to live in, and or where I would have chosen to live. So this actually happened with me when I was in the Marine Corps and I got stationed in Yuma. I thought and wanted to be stationed in Memphis, Tennessee, close to, my family, friends, and loved ones. That's where I wanted to be. But Uncle Sam gave me orders to go to Yuma. So, but my thoughts and narratives were how awful Yuma was. It was a lot of orange groves. It was different than Tennessee. It should be. It's a different place in the country, right? It's a whole different demographic. So it's not supposed to be the same. But my mind is like, don't bother me with the facts. My mind is already made up. And so, but what would life have been like if I would have gone beyond it shouldn't be this way. I should be there. And when I think about that, I have a great example of what life would have been like. It would have been like the way that my friend in the military, Peter Sarmony, lived. We were the same age. We came in right around the same time in the Marine Corps. We had to do the same kind of like tasks and duties. We same 5 miles every morning. The difference was I complained about it and he just ran them. We had to do the same kind of duty of digging sandbags and filling those up and doing the same job over and over. Like we did the same thing, except his approach was different. And what he wanted to do when his service was over, the 4 years, he wanted to get in his VW bus and drive from the East Coast, Rhode Island, over to California. That's all he wanted to do is stop along the way at the national parks and just enjoy life, camp. But that was after his stint in the military was over. What I wanted to do was not wait 4 years to be back in Tennessee. I want to be back in Tennessee now. And so he, so Pete didn't have a narrative that was in the way of him experiencing Yuma. So during that time, man, Pete would go out to the sand dunes on the weekends. He would go into Mexico and really get immersed in the culture and learn the language during that period. He went on to go to school. He almost had his 4-year degree by the time that we got out of the military. Not this guy, because I didn't go beyond my narrative about Yuma. So I just spent the whole time complaining, clock ticking. I complained about the orange groves. I complained about, going out of the country. Everything that Peter embraced, I found a problem with because I didn't go beyond my narratives. And fast forward, my life was filled with that along the way in other areas regarding education. When I finished ASU in engineering, I'm never going back to school. That's over. Well, and I didn't go back to school for like 2 decades. And then Mayo Clinic came knocking and like, hey, listen, if you want to stay here, you need a degree in social sciences. Oh, I guess I better go back to school. And so I could have had that box checked because I didn't go beyond my narratives. And then when the pandemic hit, Mayo Clinic was like, hey, listen, we got to let you go. You're a contract employee. I was like, can I volunteer? At that point, I had the practice in place, so I was going beyond my narratives. And that opened up a world of possibilities in which I'd met some extraordinary people. When the pandemic hit for our little studio here, I could have been stuck in the narrative of this isn't fair. this coronavirus thing isn't real, or you're trying to stop us from doing this or that or whatever my narrative would have been during that period. But because I went beyond my narratives, that opened up a world of possibilities in terms of being able to do this, totally virtual for the first year experience for people, in which we actually grew our membership, to going with a hybrid model once we were able to meet indoors, but still do so safely. And it just, and the list just keeps going on. In my relationships, man, if I'd stopped by just judging people based on their physical appearance, or my first, impression of them when I first met them, that was different than I thought it should have been. Maybe they didn't say hello to me or acknowledge me. If I'd stopped there and made this snap judgment about who this person is, or what somebody else told me about them, let that influence me. Oh, so-and-so voted for them, right? They voted for this party. If I'd stopped there, created this narrative, I'd have missed out on how special people are, and the humanity in them. So, so my life is so much different that I chose to not be limited by my narratives, but to go beyond them. And, I've said this before, that prior to the practice, I thought I was living life, but really what I was living life to the extent of my limits and barriers. And once I allowed the practice to help, me go beyond those, it's a whole different world out there, man, Rick. And it's beautiful, man. I mean, I had this whole narrative about nature. You were like, no, man, none of that's true, man. Going out in nature doesn't have to be this workout. Like, it doesn't have to be like you're running like this cross country race every time you get out there, to where it's a means to an end. But it can be a spiritual experience, man, that leaves you light and joyful and peaceful. It can fill you up, Keith. You have no idea. And you're absolutely right, Rick, man. So thank you for the role that you've played in helping me go beyond my thoughts, my limiting thoughts and narratives.
Oh, you're welcome, Keith, but it's all you. And the thing that people have to realize, the folks who are tuning in to listen to what we have to say, the first step, I think, is exactly right. It's awareness. And then the second step to get you to stick to a program or to look at something a little differently is leverage. The idea that you're so unhappy dealing with your life in the way that you've been dealing with it, through an explanation to yourself about why other people are inferior and you're better, and how could they do this to me, and life is unjust. All of those feelings create a kind of turmoil that never ends. And at some point, you have to get leverage on yourself when that fills you up and you can no longer live a joyful life. You got to change. And so I think the thing that has to happen for many people is they have to feel just dang tired of where they're at, and always feeling at the bottom of their biocycle, never feeling like they're at the top of their game. Or if they're in the top of their game on one thing, they're terrible in another. There's not a consistent feeling of a joy and an appreciation for others, themselves, and life, and all the opportunities and successes that they've enjoyed to date. So I love the idea of being aware, and I love the idea that you blew 4 years not really understanding what the heck was going on because you wanted to complain about it. But that created leverage for you to realize, hey, later. Why am I so unhappy? Later, yeah. Why am I so unhappy? Yeah, 20 years later, right? Yeah, well, you had 20 years of suffering. That was your passive leverage, right? It took you 20 years to figure out, hey, I'm unhappy. I thought I wasn't, but I am. And really what the crystallizing event was what happened with your business. And when that happened, that was sort of the proverbial straw breaking the camel's back. Then you had to do a change. You couldn't go on the way that you had been going. But it doesn't have to be that. It can just be every year getting more deadening and more distant from the joy of what your life used to be or what it could be. And then you realizing that and wanting to change. So awareness, leverage, followed by the practice. And no matter how crummy you can't do the practice, it doesn't matter. Stick with it. It'll turn. Fake it till you make it, like with meditation. It's very difficult for people sometimes who are unfamiliar with meditation to sit and to try to quiet their mind. They're always coming up with something, and then they're bored or this is not working, or this is self-mastery. This is nuts. I'm sitting here. The problem is people give up too quickly, and they leave on the table a master key for solving a lot of their problems, which is what I think meditation does. There's a clarity that comes from it once you get to the point where you have a little bit of success. You can feel that feeling between the thoughts. Anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves on the topic, but my point is that I think awareness is really crucial. Then having the something happen in your life, or a long period of your life being dead, that allows you to get leverage on yourself to want to change. And then thirdly, following a regimen or a practice that forces you out of yourself and puts you in a position where you feel like you're in a better place by virtue of the practice. Meditation, exercise, gratitude. Those are things that we practice in order to bring about this feeling of internal mastery and goodwill.
Oh, absolutely, Rick. And I think that 2 points. One of which is I was in a meeting the other day in which the chief nursing officer was there, Mary Elena Murphy, and she listened to a presentation that I gave, and she wanted to share something afterwards in which we talked about gratitude. And she talked about one of the things that she's used, and she encouraged others to give it a try, was tying gratitude toward to something else, to another habit that you're doing. So every time you do this certain thing, before you do it or when you do it, practice gratitude at that time. And then, because it's something you're already going to be doing anyway, and you just tie it to another reoccurring thing or activity that you do every day in your life. So for example, get in your car to go to work, or wherever you get it, the first time you get in your car, I'm doing gratitude before I take off, or whatever that is, you tie it to something that you normally are already going to be doing. So I think, and that will help with what you talked about with making it a habit. I think for those people that have noticed, or it's been called to their attention, that they have a narrative about, well, not a narrative because you may not be aware of that, but that, hey, when you first get home from work, you might as well not be home because you're still at work, mentally, you're not even here. So, and there's a narrative that they're spinning about it that they can become aware of. But if you want to tie it to a habit, is that when you walk through the door, you're going to eventually come in contact, if you live with other people, with a loved one. When you come in contact with a loved one, your thing is not to notice what's wrong about the house or what's missing. For the first 5 minutes, it's just to be present with them. And take every day that you come home, that's your practice, that the first 5 minutes you're with them. It's not like, hey, I'm too busy this time. No. It's every time. Because would you be too busy that time that you saw them if you knew it was the last time you would see them? I don't care what else you got going on. You would not be too busy to miss that interaction. So make every interaction like that, because you don't know when the last time will be. And I'm trying to treat every day that way. The other thing I will say about the narratives is that the narratives don't necessarily have to be something that you create, or sometimes we don't even know we're creating them. It's just like thoughts in our heads. We don't have any control of what's popping up. It just happens. It's part of the human condition. And the same thing, but we do have control over once we get awareness is whether or not we identify with those thoughts and narratives. But even that takes practice in, like you said, Rick, that space so that you can have awareness with it. But one of the things is if we're going to start with the premise that we create our own narratives, what about when someone else creates them for us? Like sometimes the news or what's in the headlines or social media can create a narrative for us. And before we know it, we become little by little identified with it, that it moves us so far away that we become a person that we don't even recognize anymore. Like I became this person as a kid who was loving, but I became so addicted to being a perfectionist that who is this guy here that didn't know how to stop and have fun and play and be joyful and laugh? Like I became so far from who I was and you recognize this person. So it's one thing that other people or notions about how life is supposed to be and the track that we're supposed to be on, this hamster wheel, it can take us further away from who we are. And then another thing, and there's an example, I have this friend who I respect a great deal. One thing that I've noticed is not her, but her behavior is often that when you say, hey, listen, I'm going to meet with this person, is there anything that you can tell me that would be helpful? Her thing is almost always, well, you need to watch out for this. Have you met the person? And so you know what I had to do is I would take it and be like, so I go into, without even knowing, go into this interaction with this person thinking that they're going to be a certain way. Yeah. And soon I would just show up the way that I show up. And I'm just like, they're nothing like that. Like, they're amazing. And my friend, I stopped going to my friend to ask her an opinion on anybody, because that's what shows up. Now, my friend is amazing. I haven't confused that behavior with who she is. I just know that I can't trust her like that. I can't trust her opinion on people because it's her experience and where she's coming from. No, I want to see people. I want to see the humanity of people. So please don't tell me anything about them. You know what I'm saying? Unless it's something gonna put me in physical danger. But like, you better watch your back, man. They're politically, they're politically motivated in the workplace. No, man. No, I got it. And they may be, but I don't want that to impact my experience of them. I want to experience them in another way. And if they show up that way, that's their path. My path is this way. So because what? I'm committed to living beyond my thoughts and narratives, or the narratives and thoughts of the people, so that I can keep an open heart at all times. I want to keep this thing open. I mean, that's my goal for the way that I want to live life, the way that I want to serve. I need an open heart for that. Can't do it any other way, Rick. So I just encourage everyone to really check out their narratives. And are you living beyond them? And what would life be like if you live beyond the narrative? Like, oh my God, this pandemic is this. Oh, it's so awful. What if you live beyond that narrative? What would life be like? What would your day be like? I can't believe the kind of work day I got, man. It's going to be, oh my God, I'm so busy. What if you live beyond that? What would life be like? I can't believe the way my spouse does this and does that. What if you live beyond that? What would life be like? I mean, seriously.
That's a very sweet exercise. Just to pretend, just what would life be like if I didn't have this thing going on right now? And then just pretend, act out how that would look for you. I mean, just play with it. Pretend you're in a play and you're not even being yourself. You're doing this role where you're no longer attached to thinking those people are acting the way they're acting to make you angry or disappointed. That would be a very interesting exercise. And I encourage you to try it. I love the idea of fake it till you make it. I think that's really important. There's something that happens, even if you don't really intend to smile and you smile, something happens that's good, that's positive.
Yeah. And, for you, it's fake it till you make it, I think which is really the same as just practicing it, right? So practice smiling. When you're going through the situation, smile, through it. Who was telling me that? I think it was Brian Chung was telling me that physiologically, something happens that affects you psychologically, that when you smile, it relaxes you, it calms you.
Yeah. I love that, Keith. I love that. Always hearing the stories of your transformation, where you're at and how you approach life. It's instructive for me. And I really love being in your presence. And it was a great session this morning. Thanks for sharing so much.
All right. Thank you, Rick. I love you, man.
Adios.
Adios.